This video, we're able to go over the overview of the definition and general descriptions or generic representation of metabolism, wherein we know that it is the sum total of all biochemical reactions taking place circularly in the human body. Okay? So here we have a diagram showing a simplification or a somewhat segmenting of the different processes involved in different locations of the body and the different biomolecules being involved. So, for instance, as I mentioned, the moment we consume food, so it has to be digested first. So it has to undergo or to go through the digestive tract so that from carbohydrates we're able to obtain glucose, which is the subunit. Then from your lipids, you're able to obtain the fatty acids. And from your proteins, you're able to get the amino acids. Now, these three different subunits will have to simultaneously proceed to the cytoplasm, where they have to be transformed into, so for instance, for glucose, so it will be further oxidized into pyruvate, and fatty acid will be oxidized, so you will have acetyl coenzyme A. For your amino acids, so it's either you have acetyl coenzyme A or carboxylic acids, all before they enter the citric acid cycle. And then the citric acid cycle happens in the mitochondria. So just a review of your catabolism versus anabolism. So anabolism is synthesis, catabolism, so to cut is breaking down. So in terms of energy requirement, you need ATP so that anabolism will proceed. And meanwhile, catabolism produces that ATP. So in terms of purpose, anabolism is responsible for cell growth, repair, and reproduction, while catabolism provides the energy and facilitates waste removal. So here are the specific processes. So anabolism, you will always see there the word synthesis, so biosynthesis. Meanwhile, for catabolism, so you have respiration, fermentation, and degradation. So if you want to watch the video, so you may do so. Now, hydrolysis reactions are the reasons why from your complex biomolecules you're able to obtain the subunits. So carbohydrates, your polysaccharides, the subunit is monosaccharide. So hydrolysis means to say there is addition of water. So you break down the long chains of those subunits in order to obtain the basic units. So you hydrolyze polysaccharides to get glucose. You hydrolyze polypeptides or proteins to obtain the amino acids. And lastly, you hydrolyze triglyceride to get the free fatty acids. Then further, so these subunits has to be oxidized. So this is their forms in which the body is able and readily to process. So for glucose, so when you oxidize glucose, you will get pyruvate. Then there are two byproducts in the form of carbon dioxide and water. So pyruvate here will be the useful form so that it will become acetyl coenzyme A. Meanwhile, the body will eliminate carbon dioxide and water. Likewise, for amino acid, so if you oxidize amino acid, you will get acetyl coenzyme A. Same with fatty acid. And then byproducts are still carbon dioxide and excess water. So let's start with carbohydrate metabolism. There are four major metabolic processes of focus, but we can somewhat divide them into two subparts. The first part has to deal with glucose metabolism. The second will be glycogen metabolism. For glucose metabolism, you have glycolysis and gluconeogenesis. Glycolysis is simply the breakdown of glucose into pyruvate or lactate. So it occurs in the cytoplasm of all cells without the use of oxygen. So it is also called Embden-Meyerhof pathway, and it generates two ATP molecules. There are two phases, the investment phase and the payoff phase. So this is what your glycolysis looks like, wherein your product would be two ATP molecules. Starting with glucose and then different enzymes involved in order to transform it into pyruvate or lactate. So you're trying to break down the energy, okay, because you need the energy. So the rate limiting step happens here, wherein insulin and glucagon is already involved. On the other hand, the reverse is gluconeogenesis, in which earlier you start with glucose and then you end up with ATP. This time, you need glucose. So, neogenesis, genesis start, neo is new, so glucose, meaning to say you start to obtain glucose, or you tend to synthesize glucose, but this time, you get it from non-carbohydrate substrates, such as from your amino acids. Just remember, they contain sugar residue. So from your lactate, which is one of the products from glycolysis, and glycerol, which is found from or obtained from your triglycerides. So gluconeogenesis occurs primarily in liver cells, could also be in the cells of kidneys, intestine. And then it starts with glycogenolysis. It starts with glycogen breakdown after depletion of glucose, meaning to say it is stimulated when glucose level is low. So it is somewhat backwards glycolysis, except with the three exceptions wherein the three enzymes are involved. So here, you start with pyruvate or sometimes lactate, and your end product is glucose. And this glucose will then be transported into the bloodstream. So here is a side-by-side comparison of glycolysis and gluconeogenesis. Okay, so starting with glucose, for glycolysis, your end product is pyruvate. But for gluconeogenesis, you use pyruvate in order to obtain glucose. So more or less, you have same enzymes involved, except for the first step in glycolysis and the last step in gluconeogenesis. So another would be uh, in the rate limiting step, wherein you already form where you add the number of phosphate groups. In glycolysis and in gluconeogenesis, phosphate group decreases, so from bi to mono. So you have different enzymes involved for that. And lastly, so at the last step in glycolysis and the first step in gluconeogenesis. Now, these two happen simultaneously in one specific cycle, which is called Cori cycle. Okay, so this is the reason why when humans exercise, they don't collapse right away, even though there is possible depletion of blood sugar happening. So that's because gluconeogenesis is stimulated in the liver, and your muscles also initiate glycolysis, all for so that your body will not run out of glucose. Okay. Next is glycogen metabolism, both glycogenesis and glycogenolysis. And we know glycogenolysis is responsible for somewhat stimulating gluconeogenesis. So glycogenesis is conversion of excess glucose to glycogen so that the body can store it in the liver. So from your glucose, your monosaccharide, it binds with the other glucose molecules present in the body to form your branch glycogen to be stored in your liver and skeletal muscles. Meanwhile, glycogenolysis, so you break down glycogen and the hormones responsible for that. So for your liver is glucagon, for your skeletal muscle is your adrenaline. So usually when the body is starving or when your body is under stress, so glycogenolysis can happen. So from the long chains of glycogen, you obtain glucose by breaking down that by debranching using your enzymes, so glucosidase, until such time when you have the form glucose 6-phosphatase, your liver will convert that into glucose by removing the phosphate group. However, for your muscles, you don't have that enzyme, so that's where glycolysis and gluconeogenesis and glycogenolysis are connected. But still, at the end of the day, they both provide energy to your body. Now, one specific disease or disorder involved with carbohydrate metabolism would be diabetes mellitus. So there are two types, so type 1 and type 2, and it varies with dependence or resistance to insulin. So type 1 is said to be referring to patients that are insulin dependent because although the body provides insulin, it cannot give sufficient amount or sometimes no insulin is produced at all. Another In the other type, we have type 2, so insulin resistance. You are able to give or produce insulin, but your body does not accept it. So what are the symptoms? So polyuria, frequent urination, polydipsia, so frequent thirst, polyphagia, frequent hunger, in which the patient does not feel satisfied. And you also have this one, slow healing wounds, so it's common in both. Then for type 2, Also, in type 1, you have blurry vision, fatigue. Now, the difference in type 1 is patients tend to lose weight. Meanwhile, in type 2, so they experience peripheral neuropathy, or some would say kind of numbness of the hands. In terms of management, so there is a regulation of insulin and frequent blood sugar monitoring. So onset, so age groups affected usually by type 1 diabetes is those under 30 years old. For type 2, those over 40 years old.